Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and it's my pleasure to have you join me for this lesson. And the thing I want to talk about today is this idea of a manager's schedule versus a maker's schedule. See, this to me is really important because a lot of times most people don't consider this, and when they don't, they're not as productive as they can be. So let's kind of define what the two are. A maker is someone that is, as the name implies, producing something, right? So it can be an editor editing a video. It can be, for example, in my regular job, I put together, I edit podcasts, right? And that takes several hours, and I have to be very focused. Whereas managers, they look at more of the landscape. It's not to say that they're not doing anything, but their concentration is a lot more, let's say, sporadic, for a lack of a better term. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but they have to, we got to schedule some meetings. This is where we got to do, right? So it's a lot of quicker tasks, okay? Versus a maker, they need longer periods to complete the things that they're doing, and they need that concentration because there's scientific evidence that it takes about 21 minutes to really refocus on a task if your attention gets taken away from that, right? So especially for a maker, the bigger the project, the more concentration, the more time you need. And again, going back to this idea, this is all about productivity. And so I feel like there's a lot of managers that manage makers, and they do it based on their schedule, and it actually interrupts the flow of a lot of these makers. So if you're a manager, you should actually be protecting your makers and letting them have large chunks of time to be able to do the things that they need to be doing, and so that way they can meet the deadlines that you have set forward and so forth. And now, mind you, if you're a maker, you kind of have to also really understand this about yourself, because a lot of times makers get frustrated and so forth, but they don't verbalize it. They might not even know that this is kind of what's happening. And so, maybe have a meeting with your manager and be like, hey, listen, when I come into work, just let me have 4 hours just uninterrupted to do the things that I need to do. And then any meetings, why don't we do towards the end of the day? Whatever the case may be, whatever works best for you. And, the interesting part is sometimes, we're not all purely managers and we're not all purely makers. I, for one, am definitely primarily a maker in a lot of things that I do, whether with the video stuff that I do, whether with working on my feature film, working on the books that I write, working on various side projects that I do, and so forth, right? I'm a maker, but I'm also a manager because when I was doing my feature film, or even now as I'm still kind of completing it, I have to make sure to schedule people for ADR sessions, make sure that we have a colorist, the music's good, and so forth, right? So I have to kind of manage these various moving parts. So no one's purely just a manager or a maker for the most part. And so part of the challenge is you have to figure out how to fluctuate. So you have to, one of the things I do, I try to batch everything. So, I try to dedicate time. Okay, this is my maker schedule. And then, when it benefits me, this is when I'm going to focus on my managerial tasks, right? So I structure my kind of day around that. In fact, a lot of people do, whether Tim Ferriss, Ryan Holiday in particular, his schedule is, he writes books, he has a marketing firm, and he does consulting, right? So he actually dedicates his mornings to his writing, and, that's his maker part. And, he's of the mindset, and I actually believe it's true. There's a certain point where the law of diminishing returns kicks in, and, you've worked for a number of hours in terms of the writing. There's no point in continuing. So generally for him, that's about noon. So he'll write from the morning till noon, and then he'll go into his manager schedule, managing his marketing firm, doing consulting, and so forth, right? So that's how he breaks up his schedule. Now for you, it could be different. Maybe you want to be a manager in the beginning, and then meaning at the start of the day, and then towards the end of the days when you kick into maker mode. However it works best for you, but start to view it from this lens, because that will allow you to be a lot more productive with the things that you have. And also part of this skill set is understanding what is a maker task versus a manager task. Obviously, something that's going to take you a longer period of time is generally going to fall into the maker task. So there it is. That's what I have for you. Feel free to dive in deeper by looking this stuff up online, or comment below with any questions you may have. Especially one of the ways I encourage you to think about this is to view your own schedule, the things that you are doing, and if you have questions about it, write it in so that way it's as specific as can be, and it's also applicable to you, right? Because it's one thing to gain knowledge, but it's just potential, right? True wisdom is in doing the things, right? And so I want you to be able to apply this to your own life. So if you do have any questions about how to do that, please comment and let's talk about it. I will be happy to converse with you. Also, feel free to share this with anyone who you think it might benefit. I would truly appreciate that, as I'm sure they would. And lastly, if you haven't yet subscribed or followed me, by all means, I encourage you to do so. That way you can get all this various content that I'm putting out when it hits, So lastly, thank you for taking the time to tune in. I know your time is very precious, so I hope I have brought value to your life and your day, and I hope to see you next time.